Good evening and welcome to a new edition of To The Point. The World Youth Forum in Sharm El Sheikh just wrapped up this evening with a distinguished panel. We'll be discussing the highlights of the forum and, more importantly, how does this one differ from others, and what message is Egypt delivering to the world at large. And here I'm not only incorporating the youth but all brackets, so to speak. With us this evening to discuss this issue is Ms. Riham Elinin, who's an entrepreneur and member of the Egyptian Junior Business Association. A pleasure to have you with us. With us also this evening is Dr. Cherif Amir, who's a researcher of geopolitics at the University of Paris. A pleasure as usual to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
The World Youth Forum and the message it is delivering to the world at large will be under discussion this evening on To The Point right after this, so please stay with us.
باسم كل الشعب المصري بتوجه لكل الشباب اللي موجود معانا وحتى لشباب العالم كله بالشكر والتقدير والمحبة. أرض سيناء اللي احنا بنتكلم عليها دي اللي كانوا بيحاولوا إن هم يخلوها أرض للشر، وإحنا قلنا لا يمكن أبدا تكون غير أرض السلام وأرض المحبة، ودي الأرض اللي تجلى الخالق العظيم عليها في شرم الشيخ وسانت كاترين هناك في جبل موسى على أرض مصر المحفوظة بأمر الله سبحانه وتعالى. تحيا مصر، يحيا السلام، تحيا المحبة، يحيا الاستقرار، يحيا شباب العالم، يحيا شباب العالم. شكرا جزيلا.
Welcome back. Dr. Cherif, I'll start the discussion with you. And basically, how do you see this forum different from the previous ones? This is not the first World Youth Forum, and it's not the first youth conference, so to speak. How do you see it different this time?
First of all, the number of participants. It's a huge number this time. The topics are very, very significant because they are treating crucial issues about the future for all these young people all over the world. How to combat terrorism, how to combat poverty, how to look at the future another way. And I think it's very positive that a leader, a significant leader like President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi talks face to face with the next generation of other countries, because I know that many of them will be future leaders also. So I think that this is something which is very important for Egypt's image at this time also, because we are expecting a huge boom in the tourism industry, and it's just months before the high season. So this is a great opportunity. Of course, terrorism tried to hit this event by the act of coward terrorism in Mania against the Coptic Christians there. And I think that Egypt gave an example that we are fighting terrorism and we are in the same position as other Western countries fighting the same enemies. So I think that the message is clear this time, that there's obstacles, but we are heading towards new era, and I think that we will be able to gather the same number of people and maybe more again next year. And I think that these young people, this time, when will they go back to their countries, they will be asked about what was the reaction of the people towards the terrorist act that took place and all that. They will talk about the solidarity of the Egyptian people. They will talk about the determination, the security in the other parts of our nation. So this time it was a time of truth, and the president gave them a real assessment of what is going on. And the open discussion is always it's the heart-to-heart discussion with the young people, and it gives the message directly to their minds.
Ms. Riham, maybe one of the issues that I was planning to address is the message that the youth will be leaving with. But maybe let's take it from another angle, and that is the Egyptian versus the other nationalities of youth. When we talk about business, for example, we're always talking about how the private sector, or how we can merge with the world at large as a global economic concept, so to speak. How does a forum like this pave the way for something like this in the future?
Okay.
Sort of shape the minds of the young generations.
For shaping, there's many things happened in this forum. One of the main things is the open discussion and assessment for the whole situation and the reality which we are having in our region, and especially in Africa, and in specific for the youth. President Sisi has already highlighted a number of messages for the youth. One of them is the acceptance for the reality about where are we from the whole world. One of them is that we do have challenges, and no one will solve these challenges except these youth. For example, one of the questions which has been highlighted in the discussion, a student or a youth asked President Sisi that they are asking for the global leaders to accept the youth and open their doors for them. What I liked about the answer is that no one will accept you because they are stable. They have their economic stability, they have their political stability. So why they will bear with our problems as youth? Why will they take the way of thinking, the way of our culture with all of its effects, and go to these countries? So the only solution that we face our problems from business perspective, from the cultural side, if there is job creations, we know our problem. Even in business, when we talk about pitching a business, the first thing we do is thinking about the problem, like 90%, then looking at the solution for 10%. So from business perspective and youth perspective, we have to change our mind shift so that we tackle all of this kind of problems we have in the local and in the region around them. So it is a great opportunity for all the youth that they tackle all of this kind of opportunities, see what is the resources they have that they can generate from it more business and more SMEs. This is the future for the entrepreneur. This is the reality for the youth, to create more jobs, to have more opportunities for business.
I noticed that maybe there was a lot of political talk in this forum. The president's statements were loaded with a lot of political aspects, and maybe more so than the previous forums. Or am I misreading?
No, it's true. And I think that that means that he's up to date to what's going on. He knows that now there's, especially in the Egyptian society, debates about the economic situation, about the political situation, and I think that he's aware of the effect of the social media and the outside media also, and this is his role now to give the answers to the people, because we receive the info as citizens from outside the country and from the social media. If the leadership would not give the answer, it will be a huge problem. Maybe this is what happened in the period prior to 2011, before the Arab, what they call it, the Arab Spring. There was a gap of info. I think that President Sisi is taking care about that. He knows that there are rumors taking place. There are people who are trying to give another image about the country. So he is giving all the answers about it. I think when he spoke to the Egyptians about the economic situation, he was very realistic. Some of the answers were stunning for some people, especially about the raise of salaries and all that, about the education. He was very clear that, we're still having a long road to continue. We have no other options. And this was very smart because he didn't give the usual optimistic governmental readings of facts. He gave real facts. And what impressed me, that he gave a message to the media at that time. He said, I do not wish, and this was very stunning from a Middle Eastern leader, especially the Arab world, he says, I do not wish to see a media praising my administration, rather praising our country. And this was very clear that he is aware also that some of the media are mixing between praising the person. And he said, I don't want to see praising persons. We want to see praising the country and the development that's taking place. So when he gives such answers to the people get really surprised that the leader is speaking as if he's one of them. And this is the secret of communication with the people. So I think that his political talking this time was very, very clear, and but I think that this would be continued afterwards because there is so much to be discussed afterwards. So I hope that the media would get this message also and try to be following the developments made by the administration, by the president, and the people will understand that this is the man who made this afterwards.
From an economic perspective, how this is indeed a gathering of the youth, but it definitely is a boost in the Egyptian economy.
Definitely. Yeah.
How does it boost our economy?
Okay. Already there's a number of initiatives and there is a number of discussion has been taken and recommendation in this forum. One of them, again, is supporting the entrepreneurship and SMEs. President Sisi has called for a united forum to be made specific for innovation and entrepreneurship. And this, of course, it's a great opportunity for not that this is not just a forum and to be done. No, it's an ongoing process so that we can create more opportunities for the youth. Another thing which is great that there is a prize, not a prize, what would they call? Tamwil, funding, yes, African funding for the small and medium enterprises, and this will be managed by the government, by the Egyptian people. So this is a call from President Sisi so that we can have a one fund for funding these small and medium enterprises. So, of course, all of this initiatives is very important for the whole region in Africa and in the Middle East as well. The other thing that as more as you have economic prosperity, you will find stability and all the nations and the youth will have more opportunities. They will not be. It will be killing indirectly the terrorism, the illegal immigration, creating even hope for this youth will be. Very good for the whole region and for the surrounding around us.
on the threshold, the eve really of this forum, this tragic incident, this tragic terrorist incident took place. President Sisi has been repeatedly calling on the world to stand united and confront the concept of terrorism. What message do you see he delivered in this forum? And I don't mean to the youth, because the media was out there rolling, and there are messages, especially since really the event, this took place on the eve of the summit. The timing was definitely giving the world a message.
Of course, it's a tragic eve. All of us who were severely hit by this sad and coward terrorist attack. And I think President Sisi, we saw the facial expressions that he was not really enjoying the first sessions because his heart was with the victims.
Definitely.
I think that the message that he gave is that Egypt is still the country was facing terrorism in this region and still standing. And when we urged the world to support us since the revolution of 2013, we were right about fighting fundamentalist thoughts. And we had another message afterwards, and I think that when the president was elected in 2014, it was about tackling the ideological force of these terrorist minds, meaning that not only we will combat terrorism with arms, we have to combat it through education and through also the youth. And I think that the message he gave to the world, that although we had this event, I read many of the comments. People said, why didn't he cut short his presence there and go back to Cairo and manage this? I think that the message is that we could go on with what we are doing, but the pain is the pain, and we endured this pain, and this was a message for all the world. Look at what we're enduring, because people outside Egypt, especially some hostile media, are giving other images about Egypt. So I think that President Sisi gave the message, the following message, that through dialogue and through dialogue with the next generation, we will prevent the tragedy that we are living today, because extremist ideology was rooted since decades ago. And I think that he was very aware that the people in Egypt this time had some anger, because we are fed up with all these terrorist attacks. And the world didn't want to listen at a certain time until Europe and the United States were hit by terrorism. So I think that he said it, that we said before, all the free nations will be the target of these terrorist elements. So we are the land.
Is the world taking this seriously enough?
The world is playing the powers, especially in the Western world. They are playing dangerous games, dangerous game about the interest. Look, for example, what's going on in Idlib, for example, in Syria. We all know that this enclave is full of foreign, not Syrian elements. They are all terrorist elements.
Gosh.
And not only that the Turks are invaded this enclave, but now they are negotiating about the sovereignty of Syria in its own land.
Yes.
And the West is going on with this negotiation. We don't negotiate with terrorists. I think that the Western leaders said it before concerning their own terrorist acts. That when they had terrorism on their land, they used to say, we don't negotiate with terrorists. So I think that there's double standards in this. Once there will be one standard, one strategy, and one vision about this threat, I think things will be settled in a matter of maybe days, because it's all about the will of these superpowers.
Can a forum like the World Youth Forum mobilize the youth to act as a nucleus to reshape public opinion between the young generation, because unfortunately most of those grabbed to actually undertake those terrorist acts happen to be from the young generation. The masterminds are elderly or older people, but the actual executives of those acts happen to be from the youth. Can such a forum create this momentum, this passion within youth to go around and start educating their peers about the grave consequences and how those organizations are anything but religious? It's a political movement that is aiming at destabilizing especially this region. Can we use such forums to do this, or do you think it's doing that?
Yes, there's two messages very important has been given again from the President Sisi. When he say blindly to the youth, please take care of your countries. And there's another thing he said it, but let me clarify first when he said take care of your countries, because you might have your own opinion, you might have your own anger about something, but be very sure about how you mobilize this anger. It is, as he also said, that it is very easy to destroy a country. But it's very difficult to build a country. So when you are angry about something, there is the only way to build your country is by work. And he has said it like 2 or 3 times in his talk. So, and again, like if we look at countries like Germany, Japan, anger lead them to nothing. But the work that they have done and they're insistent on building their countries, it lead them to somewhere. There is another thing President Sisi has said in his talk, that no country can keep helping Egypt or any other countries. They can help them for a time, but they cannot keep helping them. We are 100 million. We are 100 million in population. 65 million of it are youth. So if big nations want to help Egypt, they already also have limited resources. So the only way for sustainability for these youth is to build their own nation and to build their own country. It's not an easy task. It requires a lot of effort. It requires a lot of study about what do we have in our countries, and no one can change this country and lead it to a better unless ourselves. Yani even if there is corruption somewhere, still this is our people. We have to insist in facing these challenges for the sake of our nation and for the sake of the coming generations.
The president initiated the concept of a youth forum. It started off locally, and it was traveling in different governorates to incorporate the different minds all over Egypt. And then we went globally by doing the World Youth Forum. Yet we're still awaiting the president's forum to work with the youth. There is a limitation to how many of the millions of the young generations that can attend such a forum. How about, and here I'll be throwing at the businessman or businesswoman, how about an initiative by the business associations, for example, and maybe NGOs, what have you? I'm capitalizing on the fact that you're here. It cannot be just an annual meeting or a biannual meeting when the president does it, because he cannot reach and mobilize and educate and intellect and politicize or economize all the youth in Egypt. So it has to be, I mean, this is a nucleus and we have to replicate it, replicate this example. Or am I harsh in saying that we're not doing anything really to build our youth?
Oh, okay. I think not just replicating, but integrating. Because what I can see from many things, that there is a lot of events happening about talking. But what about the action plan? Let's talk, if you're talking business, okay, you can have the strategy, okay, then you have objectives, then you have initiatives, and in every initiative you have to have an action plan. So actually this, we still lack it. I can't see a short-term action plan so that all the NGOs and all the associations...
We're again waiting on the president to do this.
Yes.
What about the different associations creating their own action plan in accordance with, we know what the country needs.
No,
you have young businessmen, young people that want to start up business and don't know how to do it. You have young people that need to be well educated. You have young people that need to be politicized. I mean, if we look at our political parties, we would notice at how shallow, I mean, especially over the past few years, we've noticed how they need to be revamped with the young generation, young minds, learning how to practice democracy, how to fight for their rights, how to become aware of being constructive members of economic or political reform. This cannot all take place with the president's initiative. I mean, take into account the amount of challenges that Egypt is facing right now. Or am I mistaken?
You're very right. You're very, the number. Look, there is some initiatives already has been taken, but it's still not enough. If we look at about the strategic plan of our country, beside it has, or in front of it has to have resources. We're still lacking the resources. But there is another point, unfortunately, and this is, it requires time. The human resources still lack the qualification so that they can manage or reach to this action. We still have the lack of, for example, the startups and entrepreneurs. Until this moment, they don't know how to start. The percentage of how to start a business is still lacking a lot of education. The vocational itself, the vocational education, the qualification of the laborers are still not as much as good that it can be sufficient to meet this this plan.
I think that's, of course, you have hit the target, and I think that it's also, we have as a country, especially in Egypt, a huge burden now. It's combating terrorism and economic development challenges at the same time. And there is also a debate whether we start with the economic development or we wait that stability will be in the Middle East all over the place.
We're going to be waiting for a very long time.
Yeah, of course. And that's why I think
I think maybe if we become economically sufficient, that can lead to stability.
That for sure, for sure.
And that's why President Sisi started the infrastructure development, about the routes, about the electricity, the power stations that we have seen.
But you need to develop the minds of the future generations, educationally, vocationally, what have you. Is it only the government's responsibility? This is what I'm talking about. You are a country that is very rich in human resources. We have an ample number of human resources. It so happens this ample number happen to be from the young generation. They're still clean. They're still white. They still need formatting, learning. Is it only the government's responsibility? Can we just rely on such forums to educate, intellect the youth? Or do we need to have other initiatives? And who is responsible for creating other initiatives? Because we only talk about the youth whenever we have such a conference. Between the conference and the conference, where is the youth?
Let me say about the government, it's there's a mistrust because We don't know who we dealt before with the non-governmental organizations about the education. And
but you have associations. You have the business association, the junior business. You have different chambers, joint Egyptian-American, Egyptian-French, Egyptian-German. I mean, you have a lot of entities.
Let's face it. There's still some fears inside the governments about these foreign groups.
But there are local groups. The EJB is a local entity.
I know.
That used to work with the government.
But these are very little in all this campaign that we are heading into. But still there is security fears. Many people are fearing about who would give what kind of source. We have seen it during 25th of January revolution, that many who came to Egypt afterwards, they had very diverted thinking about democracy, and it was at the end the recipe that they gave us is about the destruction of the state. For example, we cannot say why the army is taking its role in building the economy. They are saying the army should be aware of it. No, our military institute had to take the role to build the economy.
Because we need to build fast.
Exactly. But some of the organizations started telling the young people...
I understand, but we're not talking about the organizations that are have different agendas. We're talking about organizations that have incorporate reputable businessmen and women, for example, to work side by side with the government, because really we cannot afford to move at a slow pace, and we cannot continue to enrich the market with unqualified youth.
The obstacle is one word: bureaucracy.
And trust. I agree with you about the trust. Yeah.
There's trust.
But I think yes, I agree with Dr. Sharif about the trust. Trust because there is Egyptian businessmen who really love their country. I would love to contribute in everything, but there is a trust from both side issues. I think this is a call that we need, like what happened with President Sisi and youth. I loved the transparency. I loved the open discussion that freely that happened. When I was hearing the talk of President Sisi, I felt my heart was going on about the vibe between the youth and President. I guess we need the same. That can happen.
A business conference.
Yeah, business conference and the NGOs, this kind of open discussion. I don't know if it will be between President Sisi or the government, but this kind of opening up the table. So let's build our country. Let's see how we can contribute about this, because no way that President Sisi can do it alone or the government can do it. It still needs every exactly.
100
so I
million.
guess it is a call for that. It is time to speak up. We have been facing since 2011 a lot of challenges, a lot of it is time so that we unite and we have a role. There's many people would love to have a contribution to. We would all love our country and would love to see our kids and our grandkids have a better life.
Well, let's hope that next time at this table we discuss how we're all working together. Unfortunately, our time is up. Ms. Riham Abu Elinin, a pleasure to have you with us. Dr. Cherif Amir, a pleasure to have you with us. We'll see you same time next week. Until then, good night.